Um, Katie, I wonder whether you've been able to sing during this lockdown period. Has there been an opportunity to sing, or have you been kind of silent?
It's really interesting. At the beginning, I found it so difficult to sing at all. I was just so upset that we couldn't do what we normally do that I hardly practiced at all for about, I don't know, probably 6 weeks. I don't think I picked up a score or even sung a note, even in the shower, which I normally do all the time. But then as it's gone on, I think we've sort of tried to find a bit more optimism, but also tried to remember that one of the things that we've always loved about music is that it makes us feel good, and it's kind of who we are. It's certainly a huge part of who I am. So I've started doing a bit more practice now, and I feel a lot better for reconnecting with a huge part of myself, because it was very sad to sort of shut all that down for a while. But I think also we're beginning to see some positive things emerging, and I feel much more optimistic about the future and about things starting again. I've got something to actually work towards now, which makes it a lot easier to go and practice.
Has it been an opportunity to rethink sort of elements of you as a performer, perhaps the relationship with the audience, perhaps repertoire, an opportunity to stand back from what's been a pretty speedy career and think a little more around what's happening?
I think the thing it has made me rethink is just life, the important things in life. Of course, it's made me rethink what we do as performers and how we connect with people. And I tried some of these sort of Zoom performances to begin with, or online performances when you just sing in your living room on your own, and you hope that people will watch. But actually, what that made me realise more than anything is that what I love about what we do is the real connection that you make with people in that moment, in the room with you. So singing into a computer is just not it. I've realised that I don't do it just maybe I don't do it at all for myself. I love what I do, but the real joy in making music for me and performing in general is that amazing energy you get back from the other people in the room, whether they're the other musicians or the audience. It's got to be real in the room, happening with people, for me to really feel like we're making something that I can feel is important. And maybe I should change my mind about that, because we might have to do more of these performances just into computers, but it has made me really appreciate the magic of being in a room with real people, because you really sense the atmosphere and the energy, and you feel when people are on the edge of their seat, or they're laughing or they're crying, or I miss that so much, that interaction.
There is, of course, a philosophical argument that, in a way, music doesn't exist until it's the relationship you've just described between a group of people listening to a performer who are not, of course, just listening, but are a participatory part of that whole experience.
Totally. And it completely changes how you feel as a performer and how your performance then goes, depending on what you're getting back from the audience. You can feel like you're going to have a great performance and you're all really fired up and ready to go, but if the energy's not quite right, either from you or from the audience, or a mixture of both, it's then a very different situation. And similarly, sometimes you're in terrible mood, or you're just not feeling up for it, but the audience give you something so special and so important and focused, and that then lifts the entire thing. So I absolutely agree that there's some sort of chemistry or alchemy that happens in the room because of the combination of all of the people there and all of their individual energies and kind of magic, and that's to me what performance, what theatre really is. And that's why we all feel so sad we're not doing it right now.
Do you come from a very musical family? Do you have parents and siblings who are as musical as you?
Yes, I do. My mum's side of the family are all amazing musicians, never professional, apart from my brother, who's a brilliant musician now, and in a sort of much cooler style of music than me. But my mum always used to sing when we were little, and she was always entering singing competitions, and so I had her voice in my in my life all the way through my childhood. And my grandparents, my mum's parents, both played the accordion, and they were both incredible musicians, self-taught accordionists. And my granddad is now nearly 100 and he still plays every day. So we've had that all the way through our lives, really, and it's been a huge influence for me anyway.
Do you remember the moment when you suddenly realised that you had a voice? Was there a kind of a eureka moment when you, as it were, leapt from the shower or the bath and thought, I have a voice?
I don't think so. I mean, I was very lucky that I had a really supportive mum who, from a really early age, just wanted me to sing just for enjoyment. She was never pushy, but she knew that I would enjoy it. And so I just sort of started by doing lots and lots of things at school, in choirs and musicals. And I started also when I realised I wanted to be a sort of professional singer. I also thought then that I wanted to be a jazz singer or be doing musical theatre. So it's taken a long time to figure out that classical music is actually the thing I want to focus on, at least mostly focus on. But I don't think there was a big moment where it all sort of fell into place. It's been quite a wiggly path, but I have always known that the only thing I ever wanted to do was to perform somehow, because of all the things we were saying earlier about that kind of magic that happens.
Who were the first people to teach you singing? Who were your first professional singing teachers?
So at school I was taught by a brilliant woman called Alison Northcott, and then when I went to university, which was in Manchester, I was taught by this incredible woman called Sarah Parry, who had been in the West End for years and also could sing opera and just everything. So she taught me that you didn't have to choose just one thing, and she sort of pushed me really hard to learn all the things that at the time I wasn't particularly interested in. Lots and lots of classical pieces I'd never heard, composers I'd never heard of, things that I just thought, oh, I won't be able to do that because I want to sing jazz. But she was totally right, because I needed to broaden my horizons and try a bit of all sorts, and also because your technique will improve so much if you're sort of doing all sorts of different things with your voice. You don't just choose one way and that's all you do. And I found it helped me a lot to have a variety of styles that I was performing in, and also it makes your voice much more flexible, because you're having to use your body and your voice in different ways all the time, and you're also having to connect with something very deep inside you. It's not just about this sort of perfect tone. It's somehow more earthy. I found, connecting with jazz and all sorts of other styles of music as well as classical. So Sarah Parry was really the woman who kind of started me thinking about all different styles of music. And then I had a wonderful teacher who still teaches me now, Elizabeth Ritchie, who taught me at the Royal Academy of Music and up until this day. And she's a wonderful mentor, and she's a technical wizardess. What's a woman wizard called?
I think I don't know. You've got me caught on a back. We should ask somebody if they know what the female of wizard is. Please tell us, and copy J.K. Rowling in as well.
Oh, yes.
I sometimes think that this relationship with teachers for a singer is a relationship that, unless you sing, you never quite understand. It's extraordinarily intimate. It's also something that can last for a whole lifetime. I've talked to singers who still in their 50s and are singing and are still going back to the people who taught them when they were in their 20s. Is this a different relationship for you too? These two people who clearly made an enormous impression on you as you were learning to sing in different ways. Mm-hmm. Are they still important people?
Really important. They're two very good friends of mine now, and I still turn to them for advice, not just about singing, but about life, because they know me so well. Because if you stand in a room with somebody, just the two of you, and you sing, it is the most exposing, real thing you could possibly do. And singers are endlessly sort of falling apart and having emotional breakdowns in their singing lessons for good reason, because you know that person has seen inside you and you can't hide anything. And a good teacher will see immediately if you are holding back, either because of the way your body is or because of the way the sound is coming out. And if they're good, they will kind of like peel away all of these layers and find the real person. So they really, really know you, and they really understand you, even though sometimes you might try to resist that.
You went from Manchester University to the Royal Academy in London.
Yeah.
Was that a kind of planned educational journey, that you do university and then you'd go to the conservatory?
Not really. When I was at university, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I knew I wanted to perform, and I knew that singing was the thing, but I wasn't sure exactly what the path would be. But it was Sarah Parry, my teacher there, who said, audition for music college. And she had actually been taught when she was younger by Glenville Hargreaves, who also used to teach at the academy. And she said, go and sing to Glenville and he'll tell you if it's worth bothering to audition. And Glenville was very honest with me, and he said, there's something there, but you're borderline, which was totally fair enough, because I had no idea what I was doing, and I was utterly terrified just to walk into the building, let alone sing. And he said, look, just work on these few things, relax, just let your real voice come out. Because at that point I had a funny mix of musical theatre, jazz, opera, all happening at once, and it was a big old mess. And so anyway, then I auditioned, and probably by the skin of my teeth, I got in, and then it was a slightly clearer path then, because it tended to be that people would do a couple of years of postgraduate vocal studies and then a couple of years of opera, if that was what you wanted to go into. And when I got there, I knew immediately that the opera course was something I desperately wanted to do. So I was delighted to then have the chance to do that as well.
The other thing that you have to learn, of course, is the whole craft of theatre. I mean, one of the things that has been a radical change in my life, for example, is the notion of the singer as an actor singer rather than simply as a singer. So where do you learn all that? Because those of us who've seen you know that you're extraordinarily gifted as an actress as well as a singer.
Thank you. That's very kind. Well, I've had some amazing teachers along the way, Johnny Ramster being one of the most fantastic, who taught us at the academy. A lot of what I do as a performer is just it comes because I believe you have to show your real self through all of your characters. So even if you don't think that you connect with that character or you're like that character, you will find somehow something in there that does connect you, or some part of their character that you can really delve into. And I just believe that our job as performers and as singing actors, as you say, is to really go there and really show as much of yourself as you can, and peel away layers rather than put on layers. I think often people feel they must build things up somehow or cover themselves to create a new character, but my feeling, and it's not right or wrong or whatever, it's just how I do it, is that the most the strongest way I can present something is to be as exposed as I can, and so my performance sort of style has developed over the years because I've actually done less somehow. I've covered myself up less over the years, and maybe that's also because as you get older, you are less self-conscious sometimes, or you realize that you don't have to be quite so ashamed of all the things we're all ashamed of when we're young. And so if you're lucky, as you grow older, you can reveal yourself more and more and more, and that, I think, is what touches people and how you can really connect with your audience. And my biggest inspiration when I was younger and still now was Edith Piaf, and she did that. I know she wasn't doing opera, but in everything she sang, she was just completely herself, and so earthy and soulful and connected to the ground. And I always found it amazing to watch her because it was so simple, and yet it just made me weep immediately. There was something so real about it, everything she did right up until the last minute. And I've always wanted to try to do that myself somehow, if it were possible.
It's presumably, therefore, and this is true of Piaf and others of that extraordinary generation, that the gift is transforming everything that is you, everything that is your biography, into material that can be used and accessed as you're creating the person who is not you but is you in performance. Is that what
exactly? I think that's how I feel anyway. And everyone has their own ways, and I'm not at all criticizing other people's versions because everyone has a method. But as exactly what you just said, that is how I work, and that's what I think we can try to do.
Katie, how important was it for you to win the Dame Joan Sutherland Award at the Cardiff Singer of the Year last year? How did that matter in terms of yourself, but also your career?
Well, on a personal level, it was the most surprising and beautiful thing, because I never thought I'd get anywhere near the semi-final, let alone win anything. And to be given the audience prize, to me, was the most important, the most significant thing to me, was to communicate with the audience. And so to win that particular prize meant so much more to me than I think anything could possibly have done. And on a sort of career level, it certainly has helped. You know, there's some more doors opening and there's interesting projects coming in, which is great, because I want to do lots of interesting, slightly off-piste projects, as well as all the very much on-piste, if that's the expression, projects. But I love the fact that I think I showed myself fully, and I showed that I like to do cabaret and Handel at this. You know, I like them both equally, and I hope that that's why certain things are now coming my way, because I think people see that I am versatile, I hope, and not scared to touch some unusual repertoire, or we do things with my voice that aren't always beautiful. I think it showed the real me, and it showed that I'm not scared to take a risk, maybe, or something like that, and that's helped me anyway. And obviously this particular situation is difficult right now because not much work is coming in for anybody, but I don't think it's done me any harm anyway.
How daunting is an experience like the Singer of the Year competition?
It was the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me, and also the most wonderful. It was an extremely surreal experience, and I felt sort of like desperately ill and desperately thrilled the entire time. But I felt like I was sort of floating around. I don't remember lots of it. I know that sounds terrible. I remember the key bit of, you know, the big performances, but there's lots of the in-between bits that are all a bit of a blur. It was very daunting because, you know, I've known this competition since I was really quite young, and I've always thought, gosh, look at those people, imagine if you could do something like that. And so then actually to be doing it was just exceptionally weird, because I thought, how on earth, they must have got something wrong. But I think I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so lucky I had the chance to be involved in it. The team of people that look after you when you're there are just absolutely amazing. There's four people in particular: David, Sue, Jamie, and Hayley, and they were just absolutely incredible. The whole thing was so well organised. They knew that we'd all be utterly terrified, and they sort of helped us through it. And if you had a problem, or you just couldn't figure out what to do with something, or your zip broke on your dress, they just immediately fixed everything for you, and made it as smooth and as friendly as possible. And I feel like we were all part of this very supportive, lovely little family unit, which certainly made the experience a lot less scary.
How helpful were the judges in comments that they made, either in public when they were announcing their decisions, or to you afterwards?
Well, it was a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I always knew that I'm a bit marmitey, and some people were really going to go, oh, that is not for me, and I was hoping some people might be interested in something that, you know, wasn't what they might have expected or something like that. But the comments were quite brutal from some judges, which I think is to be expected. But how helpful it was, I don't know, because sometimes you think, you know, everyone involved in a competition like that, the competitors, I mean, they're all young, pretty nervous, you know, of course quite experienced already, but trying to launch themselves even further or get some great exposure. But the point is, it's really frightening. And I just thought, come on, just be supportive, you know, even if you don't like that person's style or their repertoire or anything about them, at least try to engage and support those people, because the experience is pretty full on. But most of my experience with the judges was amazing, and mostly they were very helpful. Frida Kahlo was gorgeous. I know she wasn't judging on this occasion, but she was so supportive. I had a meeting with her the morning after my semi-final, and she offered these meetings to everyone, and to give advice, basically, to say how she felt we did the night before, if there was anything she could help with, how we felt about everything. And it was brilliant. And I felt that her criticism, her constructive criticism, was exactly that. It was very helpful and thoughtful, and you know, she really understood that it was terrifying, and we were all doing our best.
I'm always struck by the extraordinary variety of your repertoire. You know, Benjamin Britten, Rossini, Handel, Mozart, Massenet, the Baroque, the very beginnings of opera itself. Are you led in choice of repertoire to where you find something you like, rather than thinking, I want to belong to the Baroque school, I want to think about late 19th century opera, etc., etc.? How do you choose your way through this extraordinary variety?
I don't really choose, to be honest. If something comes my way that seems interesting, I usually just go for it. My opinion is that it's really good to just try stuff out, unless you're absolutely certain you can't do it. So for me, you know, I wouldn't go anywhere near Wagner at this point, probably never. But there are lots of things that I haven't tried, which maybe I could try. And my feeling is that it's great to just be as varied as you can and challenge yourself in different ways, challenge your voice, but challenge your performance skills in different ways, and try to find things that you've never found before. And also you might find that there's something, a genre of music or a style that you've never tried, but actually you have a gift for it, or you really connect with it somehow in a way you didn't think you would. I used to find Baroque music just really not my thing. And suddenly it, actually, because of Ian Ledingham at the Royal Academy doing his Bach cantata series, I found myself completely lost in Bach in the most wonderful way. And then that was sort of how that developed. And so it was him that said, just have a go. Let's just do some more Bach. And I'm so glad, because my goodness me, what a thing. If there's one composer you know you've got to choose, surely it's Bach or Handel.
Had things been otherwise and happier, you would be with us now here in Deal.
Yes.
You would be an artist in residence, the artist in residence at this year's festival. Though happily, I know you're coming back next year, so we can uncross our fingers and look forward to that. One of the things you would have been seeing is Paul Edlin, who is, of course, the artistic director of the festival. You'd have been seeing Paul Edlin's piece, Frida, about Frida Kahlo, the great Mexican painter. Tell us a little bit about the role, and about what, for you, the excitements and indeed maybe challenges of that role are.
Yeah, so, gosh, I mean, you probably know Frida Kahlo had the most insane life, and the piece that Paul has written is an amazing very intense account of her life, using her diary as the basis for the work. And it was a huge challenge to learn, first of all, because we did it last year for the first time, and just to learn the notes and the rhythms, and technically just getting my head around it was a huge challenge. But I've always loved singing contemporary music, and I love the kind of brain stretching that you have to do to make sense of difficult music and difficult rhythms like this, and pitching a note from nowhere. I don't have perfect pitch, so you just have to figure it out somehow and learn it so well that it's really in your muscles, that you're always going to get it right, even if all the notes around you are completely in different keys or completely sort of like confusing. But the piece is an incredibly full-on, quite exhausting account of her very full-on, quite exhausting life. And she had a terrible and also amazing short life. And Paul has done this brilliant job of creating something that feels as wild and dramatic as her life clearly was. And she suffered with all sorts of terrible ailments, as well as having all these very difficult relationships to deal with, and trying to portray a character who was also in constant pain, physical pain, was quite an interesting thing to figure out, and how to do that whilst also trying to keep your voice relatively relaxed so you can actually sing. That was a really interesting exercise, because you want to free your voice, but you want to sound that you're struggling, sound like you're struggling, because she really did. Her life was mostly a huge struggle, and she felt everything very, very, very intensely. And if you ever get the chance to see her diary, it's the most incredible thing, because she painted on every single page, and then wrote over the top. And it's all very, very vibrant, incredibly beautiful, and then incredibly ugly, really harrowing pictures of when she had miscarriages, when she had terrible treatment, very ill-advised by some very odd doctors. And they hung her upside down to help her with circulation. They were just these awful things that they used to do to her to try to help, apparently. So, I mean, it's a very full-on thing to perform, and it's a very full-on thing to listen to, but I don't think you could do anything else, because she had a crazy, crazy life.
Are you drawn to what some people call monodramas, these musical pieces that have a single performer, a single voice, that range through extraordinary psychological territory? I mean, I'm thinking of the other great pieces, things like La Voix Humaine, by Poulenc, and of course Erwartung by Schoenberg. I mean, are these pieces that are already tucked away in your rucksack?
That's funny you should say that, because La Voix Humaine has been a project that I've desperately wanted to do for years and years and years, because it's also just the most amazing score, my goodness. And what a thing to try to portray as a single person on the stage, somehow trying to make sense of this entire story, all just told from this one side of a telephone call, and you don't even hear the other person apart from in the other instruments. And to have to imagine all of that and convincingly portray that would be such an amazing challenge. And it's such a beautiful, tragic, terrible story. And yeah, so I am drawn to that one. I don't know if I'm generally drawn to the monodrama thing more than anything else. I mean, one thing I miss when it's just me singing is other singers. Of course you're on stage with other musicians, and that's wonderful. But I love performing with other singers, and I think if I only did sort of solo singer things, I might find myself a bit lonely up there.
You also came to sing for us songs by Kurt Weill.
Yes.
And I know that you've done performances that have included other works from those composers like Kurt Weill, who were banned by the Nazis, Entarter Kunst, degenerate art, as the Nazis called it. And what for you is the appeal of Weill? Is it Weill as the Berlin composer, the Weill we associate with Mahagoni and also with Threepenny Opera, or is it the Weill who writes extraordinarily sophisticated Broadway musicals when he goes into exile in the United States?
Yeah, for me, it's always been the German Weill from the beginning of his creative life. I wrote my dissertation on Kurt Weill, and I've had an obsession with him for a very long time, and with Lotte Lenya, who was his wife for off and on, and I often feel quite sad listening to Kurt Weill's Broadway repertoire, because he was pushed there, but because he was Jewish and he had to leave Germany, and he then went to Paris and created some amazing songs, which I also love. But the stuff that he then started to create for Broadway, for me, is really missing an essential part of Weill. And you can still hear there, if you know Weill's music, you can still hear a little bit of Weill harmony in there, but he had to water it down, obviously, and slightly sort of put sprinkles on the top in order for it to be popular, and because he was writing it for specific singers that he was kind of given, because they were the big stars, and it's wonderful. I love it, but to me, it's just not got that Weill thing, and it feels somehow like it's not the whole. It's not everything that he could offer, but thank goodness he had the opportunity to escape there and still continue to be creative. And it was better, for sure. It was better to do that than not be creative at all. But I think the German rep is just astonishing.
Thinking about those songs written in Germany before 1933, do you have to find a particular vocal style for Weill?
I don't know if you have to, but I think what it requires is something, as I was saying before, something somehow earthier and a little bit freer than perhaps how we would sing Mozart, for instance. And you have to be brave to connect with parts of your body that we're all supposed to be very embarrassed by. I think there's something kind of about cabaret and jazz that is just somehow lower in your body. And I've always found that it feels like a very different experience.
Katie Bray, thank you very much indeed. You really encourage us to fast forward to a year from now when you come and join us here. But thank you so much for talking to us. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat.